We're going to be discussing 3 Years a Royal, otherwise known as Harry and Meghan, the most recent release from Netflix, a documentary documenting the incredible hardships that Harry and Meghan have gone through ever since they started to go out, all the way up until the end of part 1, which is what we got to last night. I think the two of us watching independently got to the end of part 1, which closes off right as they're about to get married.
Oh, no, I actually managed to get through all 3 episodes.
No, so did I.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But it does close off right before the wedding.
Oh, okay, yeah. So first of all, a grumble. I never watch TV, so...
I'm sorry that this had to be breaking you back into it.
Normally I watch podcasts on YouTube and I put everything on 2x speed, and the fastest Netflix will let you go is 1.5 times speed. So
I didn't even know they let you speed it up.
It was excruciating having to watch... you had to watch 3 hours. I had to watch 2 hours.
Yeah, I didn't know you could speed it up, so I was watching all 3 hours.
You did it in real time.
I was livid the whole time. It was excruciating. I was screaming at the screen at everything that they were saying. So before we go any further, I'll just point to this old article from over a year ago now from Beau, almost called him Bade, called "McCarthy Did Nothing Wrong." And I just wanted to point to this because, one, we don't promote Beau's articles enough because he does put some really fantastic articles through that on the website. You can really feel the vitriol through his writing, and I think that's one of the things that really brings me onto his writing, because he writes very passionately from the heart, and also because McCarthy is a great example of how the media can be used as a tool of politics to manipulate the way that future generations see everyone. McCarthy legitimately was just a guy trying to root out communists in a time when the US military and Hollywood, very much like it is nowadays,
he was right.
Was completely infested with communists.
Everything he said was right.
And you had propagandists, you had people like Arthur Miller doing The Crucible, which is all about witch hunts, and it's like, I'm sorry, Arthur, witches aren't real, communists are, and communists were actually infiltrating the US. But what I was taught in school, I don't know if it was the same for you, because for some reason, in my English secondary school, they thought it necessary in media class to teach us about the evils of McCarthyism. And they told us, obviously, that it was all just a witch hunt. Everything that he did was wrong. He was very mean and evil, and he brought a lot of people up for trial who turned out to have nothing to do with communism.
Apart from his factual statements, which were bang on every single one
and
of them.
Apart from the fact that almost every single person he brought up and called a communist turned out later to be a communist.
Yes. Yep.
So that's just a great example. And just to remember that when we're talking about Harry and Meghan, if things go wrong, people are going to be looking at people like us insulting Harry and Meghan the same way that they want to look at McCarthy in that same way. So you should really check out that article. It's very, very interesting. So one of the things that people really got annoyed at when this first came out, just to draw your attention to some other stuff, was go to that first Twitter link for me, John, that I've got there, the one from Calvin Robinson, was that clip.
Yeah.
Everybody hates this clip. And honestly, I understand. It's the one where there's the interview between the two of them. Harry is incredibly meek, incredibly submissive. You can definitely sense the relationship dynamics in that interview.
I've got to say, so this is probably not going to be a popular view, but
all right.
I actually do have some sympathy for Harry. I know.
He comes across like a kicked puppy.
Yeah, so, no, look, he is a total blue-pilled male. I mean, he's not particularly bright. He doesn't run at a high clock speed.
He's the physical embodiment of the Kuma meme.
Yeah, but look, to be fair, that first, in fact, if they just did the first episode and stopped there, that probably would have been all right, because the first episode is mainly about Harry and his upbringing. Yep. And look, Harry didn't choose to come into this life. You know, his mother did get a genuinely hard time from the press. And I can completely understand why he is a bit traumatized by the media and the paparazzi. So I completely get it. Plus, he did spend 10 years in the military, so that's more than I did. Thank you for your service.
Honestly, the moment in the third episode where he goes to the military base and starts speaking to everybody, you can almost see him kick to life.
Yes.
The second that Meghan goes away from him and he just sits down with the military guys, all of a sudden he's jovial, he's charismatic.
Any footage of him before he met her is a completely different person.
It is quite shocking, the change.
After the first episode, it really starts to focus. It becomes the Meghan Markle only show, and any sympathy that I could have had.
Yeah, because everything you say there, I completely understand. I recognise that what he went through, and the first episode does do a relatively good job of showing you what he went through as a child, being hounded by the press constantly, not even being able to go on holidays with the family to be able to just enjoy themselves in peace. Wherever they go, everyone's following them constantly. But that's no reason to sell your family down the river and stick it with this American harpy.
He feels very much like a passenger in this whole thing. But look, the show has a difficult job because clearly the entire point of this Netflix series is to rehabilitate Meghan Markle in our minds.
Oh, it's possibly the most self-serving piece of propaganda I've ever seen.
But there are essentially three legs to the stool of this series. The first leg is that Meghan had absolutely no idea what she was letting herself in for. They repeat that constantly.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing constantly.
Because it literally every 5 minutes.
John, do you want to just put the if we're going into the discussion, just put the clips on in the background just so we've got that.
The trailer, so you'll see some of the
aspects. Because part 2 of this is coming out on Thursday. No, I don't want to watch it, whether I end up watching it or not.
Yeah, I turned up to work this morning, really pleased with myself for having done my bit and watched the 3 series. And then somebody just casually mentions, oh, by the way, there's another 3 episodes coming out. That was me. Yeah, I was not happy about it. Yeah, but anyway, so the 3 legs of the stool is one that she had absolutely no idea what she was walking into. The second one is that the UK is just an irredeemably racist place.
They constantly bring up the Empire in the 3rd episode. I saw as well.
So that really jumped the shark. So in the 2nd episode, the only evidence that they can give for the UK being a fundamentally racist place is Brexit.
Brexit happened, therefore England bad. Well, there was that, but then in the 3rd episode they start talking about Empire.
Yeah.
Throughout it you've got some interviews from race grifters, like for instance David Olusoga, who wrote that book Black and British. So Guardian journalists who have a very clear agenda that they want to push. And one of the things that they do in the 3rd episode is they bring up the British Empire. And the British Empire was obviously a wealth extractor. We never did anything for any of the countries that we were ruling. We didn't put infrastructure. We didn't build cities. We didn't take manufacturing and industry over there. We only ever extracted wealth from those places.
Because they've got a hard job with Meghan because everybody thought that she was white. Even her own casting director makes the point that she got hired for Suits, and it wasn't until she'd been working there for some time before it occurred to anyone that she wasn't white.
Well, I think she said she had to point it out to them, and they thought that she was joking because they thought that she was just tanned Californian woman.
But at the same time as that, they've got to push this whole agenda of racism, and so they're looking for examples of it. So, like I say, Brexit, and they basically just conflate the Union Jack, people waving the Union Jack and wanting Brexit, and they showed an example of one guy who was complaining about illegal immigration as an example of how racist it was in the 2nd. By the 3rd episode, it's complete jump the shark time. It's because there was slavery in the British Empire in the 1600s. That's an example of racism.
Oh, and they point out as well, we're taught that the English abolished slavery, which, I mean, shockingly enough, I don't remember ever being taught that in secondary school. So by the time I was going through the education system, I guess they wanted to just sweep that one under the rug. Yeah. But then he goes, yeah, they might have abolished slavery, but did you know they did it by paying off the slave owners? Yes, we didn't want a gigantic worldwide war to destroy slavery. We didn't want to have to send thousands and thousands of our own men. We just decided, hey, up until this point, legally, these slave owners have done nothing wrong. Take the money and just stop it.
And essentially, the argument was there is that they didn't end slavery the same way that we would do it today.
They didn't have a civil war over it, I think, is the big problem. Well,
despite the fact that we do actually have slavery today, because of the Obama policies in Libya, there are open-air slave markets today, okay, and the US isn't doing anything about it. However, I acknowledge that if they were going to do something about it today, they wouldn't try and pay them off the way that it was done in 1807. They would just bomb them again, because that's, the US basically has 2 settings. It's either subsidise it or bomb it. And so, I appreciate they're not going to do it the same way. Well, and the other example that they gave for racism, and this was really pushing so hard because they had to make her out to be a victim. And the only hard evidence that they could actually produce is that Meghan and Harry went to a dinner with about 40 family members, and Lady whatever her name, sitting 7 down on the left.
Brooch.
Yeah, wore a brooch that had some tenuous connection to slavery. Right, now, look, I'm sorry, but if you're sat at a dinner with 40 family members, which includes the Queen, you've really got to have your antenna up to notice a brooch, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't I Heart Slavery. I'm sure
I don't know. It was some face that was done in traditional African garb and was very black. So that just means racism. I think you're right. If it had been,
But that's their strongest case.
If she'd come in waving banners that said, "I really love slavery, bring back slavery."
If the Queen had stood up after a lot of gin and just went on a 45-minute tirade about the darkies, I can understand.
She goes, William Wilberforce and his consequences have been a disaster for the West. But
it wasn't any of that. And so they were really pushing the racism and they couldn't provide any evidence of it. And the other really big theme that they wanted to have was that Meghan, like Harry, because Harry is traumatised by the press. He doesn't like seeing paparazzi. He doesn't like seeing press. Fine, I get it. I accept. I believe that is probably true because Harry is not he's not a seek the limelight kind of guy.
I mean, there is one thing I would like to point out in massive hypocrisy, which is that at various points his own children are included in this. So it's if you've been traumatised from a very young age by the press, what you should probably want to do when you have children is not put them through that same
that's
thing,
true.
And that is what you are doing. But to a lesser extent, perhaps.
They talked about Meghan's life before she met Harry, right? And every example, because she was clearly absolutely obsessed with this, was that she wanted to get in front of a camera. So they give her an example of her yearbook from when she was like 11, and the yearbook read, "One day I'm going to be rich and famous on TV." It was pretty much that. Her dad was a lighting engineer and took her to the set of
Married with Children. He was the lighting director on Married with Children, which suggests just a hint of nepotism for me.
But the thing is, her quote was that she absolutely loved being on set. She wanted nothing but to be on TV, right? And then it takes us through the story of about and they try to play the poor Meghan angle of her trying to get into TV, but she would go to rehearsals and she wouldn't get picked for the part.
I don't think anybody has ever experienced that when trying to break into Hollywood.
That's just how it bloody works. But anyway, so she eventually gets in, right? And then we have this weird juxtaposition where we got footage of her on the red carpet, and she does. I don't know what it's called, but it's that thing that famous women do when they get in front of the camera. They just like drop into the pose, and then they do the other thing.
There's the hand on the hip. You push the hip to one side.
But working the camera, you do the thing, and then you do the other thing. You hold it for a second while a few photos are taken, then you drop into and she works the camera. So all of the footage before her. Before she met Harry, is about her desperately trying to get in front of the camera. Every time a camera is put at her, she works it. She clearly loves it.
Oh, you can see her doing it in the new footage for the documentary.
Yes,
there are these weird little cut-ins that they put in, cutaways, where it's like they're in a flat, they're preparing for the interview, and she's having her makeup done, and they're having little jokes with one another, and she's looking towards the camera and she's smiling. But the whole point of those is so that you as the audience member go, "Oh my God, they're having little relationship banter. They're just like me. They're so relatable." No, they're not. They're living in a penthouse suite of a gigantic flat apartment complex. They're having clothes airdropped into them. At one point, she just opens the door, and it's almost like something from a Super Mario or something. Like they just pull through all of these clothes. And on this rack, and it's just like, this is not relatable. This is not relatable to me.
And the things that she complains about having a press team which is too small.
Relatable problems, am I right?
And then look, there's other weird stuff. So look, I think what happened is that the documentary wants us to believe that she had absolutely no idea what she was walking. She had no idea that the press had any interest in the British royal family. So she signed up for it, and even though she had been, she had basically been seeking out a camera whenever she had the opportunity before she met Harry. But the moment she met Harry, all of a sudden now she's scared of cameras. And there's that really weird scene where we're in a Land Rover being taken away by their driver, and there might be a paparazzi guy behind them somewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. You can't actually see it. There's no actual evidence of this happening.
Honestly, there were so many parts of these 3 episodes that was just fluff to try and make you like the 3 of them. But sorry, on your point of how obviously transfixed by herself she is, one of the very first scenes, they put a little phone in front of Harry and Meghan, and they play them a video where the two of where it's before Meghan had met Harry. It was 2015, between her divorce.
That's the very first scene in the series, isn't it?
Yes, right after
that. You tell the story, but it completely undercuts this whole narrative that she didn't know anything about the royal family.
Well, of course, because the person who was interviewing her said, like, "Oh, would you Harry or William?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know, Harry, I suppose." And they're laughing about it. But one of the things I picked up on was, and this might be going a little bit armchair psychologist here, but the body language was very, very telling. Harry, the second it comes up, they're watching the footage, his eyes darting between the camera and Meghan. He's looking for her. He's trying to make a little quip here and there. He's so obviously desperate for her approval and to understand her reactions, her behaviour, not so that he can, say, guide it, but so that he can react against it. Whereas she doesn't look at Harry, doesn't do anything.
Oh, she's the boss.
Purely transfixed by her own image being displayed to her.
She doesn't glance at him once, apart from when it's required of her to do the thing where she turns and smiles. But
there was one point in the third episode as well where they've got separate interviews where they interview them one at a time, where Harry comes across a bit more confident than he does when the two of them are together, I think, at least. Because there's one point in the third episode where they're discussing something about how they first met, and Meghan's in the middle, she's in a role, and Harry suddenly interrupts her, and he seems happy, he's trying to get onto a role, and she just stares at him. She gives him the daggers.
That was a mistake. You don't interrupt her.
He glances over, and he suddenly stops. He gets his head down, eyes down. You might as well have gone, "Sorry, dear."
So that was the curtsy thing. So she did that elaborate curtsy, and he was clearly uncomfortable. You could see it in his eyes. He didn't like that this was happening. But when she comes up from this elaborate curtsy, she's then smiling and turns at him and smiles, and that's his cue. Oh, this is supposed to be a smiley, happy, smile at Meghan moment.
Oh, this was a joke. This was funny.
So he instantly changed his whole demeanour from being really uncomfortable to, oh yes, this isn't as brilliant because, he doesn't want to get a beating.
I know, and to go on to some of my points here, one of the things is, this is obviously, like I said, a smear against the royals and the England in general.
With no evidence.
With no evidence. They bring up the Commonwealth after they bring up the Empire being so evil, and they say Commonwealth, literally this is the quote, they say Commonwealth is British Empire 2.0. They present no evidence for this. All of the evidence is there to emotionally manipulate you because they flash up a map of all the territories of the British Empire where it's all red. All of the territory is red, meaning it's evil. And then when they say Commonwealth, it changes to green. But then British Empire 2.0 changes back to red, so you know that it's still evil. So all of the Americans in the audience who have no idea what any of this is about, really, other than the celebrity drama of it, go, "Oh my goodness, that means that the Commonwealth is evil as well. Canada's evil as well, because Canada's part of the Commonwealth. These people are absolute morons." And then there's the fact that it comes out, they make sure to sell you at the beginning, amusingly. There's the cold open where it flashes up some info graphics at you, and it says no royals decided to comment on all of this.
Smart.
Big surprise right there. Yeah. But one of the things that they point out is that all of the footage and all of the interviews were done in August of this year, meaning that it came out that it was all done before the Queen had passed away. And you could say, oh, well, at least, he wasn't insulting her from beyond the grave. The problem with that is, because I can see in my head people trying to excuse Harry for that, is that Harry could very easily have just gone to Netflix and said, "Hey, it's only been about 2 months since my nan died. Do you mind pushing this back maybe 6 months just to allow a bit more of a respectful period of mourning so that this doesn't come out so soon after she's died?" He did nothing of the sort.
Well, Meghan would not let him do
No,
that.
Of course, that would be allowing the Queen to steal her limelight.
One final note on this. What did you make of the bit with the dad? Because that was really weird.
That actually calls up something that a bit of a broader subject that I wanted to honestly have a little bit of a rant about, but finish your question first.
Because basically the dad raised Meghan along with the mother. They shared custody between the two. And
they were separate, though.
Yeah, from the looks of it, he was a really good dad. He used to do loads with her. He used to take her to
like
the
a
set,
nice
which
guy.
she loves. Yeah, he took her fishing. He basically did loads for her. There's all the footage of them when they were younger.
It's probably his connections to the TV industry that got her acting in the first place.
Exactly. So, I mean, he seems like a perfectly decent guy, an average normie guy. But anyway...
Her mum seemed fine as well.
He gets the treatment in the third episode because what did he do? He basically allowed the media to pay him to take some innocuous shots. So there's a shot of him in a cafe reading a book about Britain. It's completely innocuous. He's not bad-mouthing anyone. He's not criticising the Queen. He's not doing anything. It's just he allowed the press to take photos of him, and he got a bit of money for doing that. And that is held up as an example of him being... I mean, he's just excommunicated at that point.
He's betrayed her. He might as well have stabbed her in the back. This was the Brutus moment with Julius Caesar.
But why is it so wrong that he took a bit of money for being photographed reading a book, but she can take millions for taking a Netflix documentary? It was just never. I was just watching this thinking, why is what he has done so evil? But you're taking 200 times that amount from Netflix, and that's fine.
The only thing that I can think is, despite the fact that they're related, despite the fact that he is literally her biological father, he is white and she is black. That you wouldn't notice as long as she points out to you that she is black. Therefore, the different standards
it doesn't go with the whole
applied.
narrative that they're trying to build, which is
They
racism, poor Meghan.
They wouldn't point out the hypocrisy of even making this in the first place. But that's an interesting point, because what I wanted to point out in the first place is, along with Meghan herself being a central fixture, you've got people like David Olusoga, who I looked up because I've read a few of his articles, his book Black and British. I've not read it. I'm not really particularly interested in it, because I'm sure it's going to be pushing a very one-sided narrative of Britain's interaction with black people during the Empire and such. But he's mixed race as well. He's got a white mother or father, English mother or father. I forget exactly which one. But at one point they bring up that in getting employed and cast in suits, they say that Meghan was one of the first big representations of mixed race people on television, which is nonsense.
No.
That's a complete lie. Everything in this documentary is meant to be self-aggrandizing to Meghan, because other than those early parts with Harry, it is the Meghan Markle show all the way through. And then I thought to myself...
I mean, after the first episode, Harry is in this in the same way that the Lone Ranger's horse is in the Lone Ranger.
Yeah,
he's a side character
an extra.
at most. Yeah.
But I decided to look up, okay, that's obvious bollocks. How many biracial actors, mixed race actors, are there out there who've been around? And I looked it up and immediately found this list from Variety magazine or something of 60 different people who are all of mixed race backgrounds. And oftentimes they would say like black and Asian, black and... there was one that was like Chinese and Lebanese, something like that. So there was quite a few, and they inevitably asked them about the divide between cultural backgrounds. But every single time there was somebody who comes from a mixed race background where it's black and white, other than Slash, because Slash comes from a mixed race background, interestingly enough,
you know that.
Every single one of them is more than happy to sell their white family down the river. They say, I identify entirely as black, I identify with the black culture, and I just think to myself, it's the same with David Olusoga, it's the same with Meghan Markle. They are, for the sake of political points and money to be made, they are more than willing to sell one entire half of their family down the river. They are more than willing to sell half of their entire heritage down the river. And I find that absolutely disgusting. I think it is absolutely repugnant. If you come from a mixed race background, I think, given that they're all your family, you should probably respect them and treat them as such, as all of your family, and not like Meghan has done here, and use this third episode of the documentary as a tacit way to seemingly get one back at her own
we
dad.
come full circle, haven't we? It's all what we started with, which is the cultural agenda pushed by these various race acts over the years, which creates a culture where one half of the family is preferable to the other half because it's more.
It's vile. And two more quicker points is, one, they're trying to act as though this whole piece is some kind of whistleblowing exercise on the royal family. I could believe that if you decided to speak up about Andrew, but neither of you did, so that's immediately discredited. And the other thing was, it was amusing in the first episode that they focus a lot on Harry, and they point out that in his younger years, to try and escape from the media attention he was constantly getting, he went to, Lesotho and Botswana, and spent a lot of time doing charity and relief work there, getting to know the locals, understanding what they went through, befriending a lot of them. I think he's friends with the Prince of Lesotho, something like that. Very interesting, and it was nice to see him go out and experience a bit of the real world, get himself out of that bubble that he was in, that he acknowledges that he was in. But then in the third episode, there's the clip where the two of them go to the NAACP awards ceremony, where she's accepting some award for female representation or something like, woke award, blah, 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 blah. And he's got a voiceover in the background talking about, I thought I'd understood the world. I thought I'd understood the plight of people across the world, but listening to these people really opened my eyes to the unconscious biases that I was swimming in. And I just thought to myself, that sums it all up, doesn't it? What it wasn't actually going and experiencing the lives of impoverished people in Africa that showed me the differences and commonalities between people. It was listening to speeches by the most rich and entitled black people in the entire world.
I think that gets us closer to the core issue here, because there's obviously been a split in the family. They are completely unable to provide any evidence as to why it occurred, apart from that Britain is an inherently racist country and an aunt wore brooch once.
Whenever they actually try and prove that, like you said, they've got no evidence, and whenever they do show footage of the two of them out doing royal attendances in public, they keep showing footage of like little old ladies going, "Oh, doesn't Meghan look amazing? Oh, I'm so happy for the two of them." So their own footage is disproving
So there is
them.
obviously the other half of this conversation which has been missed out, the other half of what caused this family breakup. It is, to your last point, it is probably Harry and Meghan started turning up and giving them woke lectures. That's probably what drove this this split in the family.
We hope you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and we all wish you a very Merry Christmas. This year, a good gift might be a £5 subscription to access all of the premium content on our website, such as Beau's interview with the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, where he asks him all sorts of contentious questions I'm sure you'd wish to put to our potential future Prime Minister. And if you'd like to see all of the content that Beau is putting out, you can go over and follow him on Getter at BeauDade. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.